occasion that we had, almost had big, huge accident. Folks come out of these side roads, you don't see them because of the curves. It's a dangerous road. I know this is not popular to talk about because I know everybody wants to go fast. They want to get a tap of honey. I understand that. But also, what is that going to affect in the safety of me and everybody else who lives along Sparta Road? And I thank you for considering that.
Mr. Fincham, you may want to just send an email to Ms. Parker and indicate that there has been a request by a citizen on Sparta Road to look at the speed limit and do a speed study on Sparta Road. Thank you.
Ms. Philsell, just to let you know, Mrs., I actually go to church in that area, so I use Sparta Road a lot. I have AT&T. That's the only place that AT&T actually works better than Verizon that I know of. So there is cell service there. Okay. And there's a tower coming too, so you'll have choices.
Okay. Anyone else would like to address the board on any issue not handled under public hearing? Last call. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on any issue not handled under public hearing? Hearing no further comment, the public comment period is closed. The next item on the agenda this evening is public hearings, and the first public hearing is Special Exception 02-2012, Jacqueline Martin, owner, Donna Moore Sims, applicant. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of your board, first public hearing tonight is SPEX 02-2012. Jackie Martin, owner, and Donna Moore Sims, applicant. They're requesting a special exception permit in accordance with Article 17, Section 13, and Article 9, Section 3.9 of the Caroline County Zoning Ordinance. The subject property is tax map 82-A-97, also identified as 24403 Rogers Clark Boulevard. The subject property is located in a Reedy Church district. The proposed use is a child care facility. The 2030 comprehensive plan identifies this property as being within the Carmel Church growth area and designated for commercial and office use. The applicant is requesting a special exception permit for a child care facility in an existing storefront at the southeast corner of Route 207 and Route 1. The small strip center currently houses a laundromat and a restaurant. The applicant proposes a child care facility for children 16 months and older with approximately 22 children enrolled the first year and a maximum number of children defined by state and county building regulations. The applicant has been working with the building official and the Virginia Department of Health to identify any required modifications to the structure to meet code requirements. The site is served by public water and sewer. The Virginia Department of Transportation did recommend that two of the existing entrances be closed to bring the entire property up to their current VDOT standards. However, that is not a requirement of the rezone or the special exception application, and staff believes that to require that modification would actually adversely affect the existing businesses and traffic flow between the proposed uses. The rear of the facility is proposed to be utilized for the pickup and drop-off area for children related to this use to separate the traffic flow from the laundromat and the restaurant in the front of the property. The applicant plans to establish a fenced outdoor play area adjacent to the rear door. The property is located within a Carmel Church community planning area and designated for commercial and office use. The child care facility is consistent with this designation. The Planning Commission felt that the application generally satisfied the standards for special use permits as set out in the zoning ordinance and would not adversely affect the character of the area or neighboring properties. The Planning Commission held its public hearing on this request at its June 20th meeting and unanimously voted to forward the special exception application to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of the 7 conditions contained in the staff report. There was some discussion about adequate fencing to the rear of the property for the children, and those concerns were incorporated in the conditions that the Planning Commission recommended.
Mr. Thomas?
Ms. Fincham,
Yes, sir.
in your report, and you just stated that VDOT recommends changes.
Yes, sir.
Recommends is not required.
That is correct.
So although they recommend, the applicant would not be required to make those changes.
That is correct, and that was not a recommended condition of approval.
Thank you very much. Just want to make sure.
Other questions of Mr. Fincham?
Just an
Taylor?
observation. There are already other businesses located there now, already.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. That's all.
All right. My question has to do with the fence area, Mr. Fincham.
Yes, sir.
I see that one of the conditions is sufficient height. Who determines that? What is sufficient?
If you want to place a specific height standard, I would recommend that we go with the 6 feet, which is the maximum that is allowed by the zoning ordinance for this type of use.
Okay. Thank you. Any no further comments from the board? We'll now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? Please come forward, Ms. Martin, and state your name and your voting district. Good to see you.
Good evening. Jackie Martin. I am the owner of this particular piece of property, and I'm definitely in favor of it because there is need for a child care facility in this area. We have been working with the county to do whatever is necessary to bring it up to its code, and the shopping center at this point is actually one-directional, one-way, so it's been improved and lined properly and signage put up, and all I can request now is that the public obey the signs like any other road sign. So if you have any questions that I can answer, I'll try to.
Okay. We may have questions at the end of the public hearing, Ms. Martin, and you may want to sit in front in case there are some questions, and we'll ask them. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? One last call. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? Hearing no further comments, the public hearing is declared closed. Does the board have any questions or any comments of Mrs. Martin or of Mr. Fincham? Mr. Thomas?
Ms. Martin, and of course you sat down already. Could I ask you a question, please? Okay. Could you pull the mic down a little closer
Yes.
to you so we can hear
I'm
you, just to
sorry.
make sure?
Sure.
I understand. The shopping center there now, the only thing that's really there, because there's a lot of history with that. That used to be where the post office was, and then they moved out. Somebody
Correct.
else moved in, and
Correct.
they moved out. The only thing there that's actually a business now is the Greek restaurant?
There's a laundromat also.
Right, in the laundromat.
And hopefully after today, I've interviewed 3 people. Hopefully there will be another business on that post office building.
Well, we'd like that to happen, too.
I would
I just want to make sure that the
Existing.
compatibility of your business works well with the compatibility or with the business that are there now. The restaurant opens up at 12, or
I
are they
believe
just
it's-
evening?
I believe it's 11, and it goes
11?
until probably 11 or 12 in the evening.
Okay.
And the daycare's time frame is, I believe, 6 a.m. to 6:30.
Okay, so there will be some sort of overlap while the restaurant's there and daycare's there?
Yes, sir. But
You don't
most
see
of
any
the-
problem there?
No, sir. The parking mostly for the restaurant is in the front of the building.
Okay.
And the daycare facility parking is in the rear. There are 3 or 4 spaces in the front, and there are many spaces on the side.
Right.
But basically, the child care would be taken care of in the rear parking.
So by using front and rear, you've made that separation clear?
Yes, sir.
Feels that you have no safety concerns at all?
No, sir, and there will be a chaperone, so to speak, for escorting the children to and from a bus, should it stop there and drop children off.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Martin, before you do sit down,
Yes.
the height of a fence that would be required around the playground area, Mr. Fincham has said that the maximum required or allowed by ordinance is 6 feet. Do you or the applicant have a concern with that? I like the fact that the protection is there, a 6-foot fence around it is there, and it protects everybody, I mean, to be quite honest with you.
I don't have an opposition to the height of it. I mean, it's going to be to the rear of the building or the side of the building. The height is not in question as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. All right, thank you. Because that may be one of the conditions that we change in here, is the fact that we do specify a height of a fence rather than just saying sufficient. Okay, thank you, Ms. Martin. Does any other board members have questions of Ms. Martin?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I think it's good with the, what we are living in now, and daycare is just a phenomenal business, and it's a great need in this county. And this seems to be a good area, and I think it would enhance the area. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Mr. Thomas?
This is actually in the Reedy Church District, but 7 months ago it was in the Mattapanai District. So since Mr. Underwood's out of town, I would make a motion that we approve special exception 02-2012.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that special exception 02-2012 be approved as presented. Is there a question? Would you include in your motion, Mr. Thomas, that
Subject to the
the
conditions.
6 foot, the conditions, and we change the fencing from sufficient to a 6-foot fence required?
And we'll make those changes in my motion.
And I will amend my second.
All right?
Mr. Chairman,
So
can I make one clarification?
go ahead.
Would you also include in that amendment or as otherwise required by the Department of Social Services in case there's a conflict in those standards?
Okay.
Would they have a higher? Would they have an 8-foot requirement?
No, it'll be less.
I don't think they'd have a higher one, but if their requirement was 5 feet and the SC required 6 feet, then you would have a conflict where they could not comply with DSS licensing requirements, as an example.
How about whichever's higher?
Can't do
That would be fine.
Whichever's higher.
Okay, you're going to amend your motion?
I'll amend the motion to say whichever's higher. With regard to number 6, the fence of 6 feet or complying with social services, whichever is higher.
Okay.
I mean, I'm 6 feet tall, so I could probably look over a 6-foot fence. So you wanted something a little higher, but if that's all she needs, that's fine. You amend your second?
I will amend my second to the fence height as well.
All right. You've heard the motion. You heard the amendments. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Martin. The next item is RZ 02-2012, Robert and Wanda Harry, owner and applicant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your next public hearing is RZ 02-2012, Robert and Wanda Harry, owner and applicant. They're requesting a rezoning from RP to M1 Industrial on tax map 95A-6A2, consisting of approximately 1.80 acres of land. Property is located on Route 301 South in the Reedy Church voting district. The proposed use is M1 Industrial. It would allow the expansion of an existing business located at that location. The applicant is requesting a rezoning of 1.791 acres of land from RP to M1 to expand their existing business. There is a recently constructed commercial entrance from Route 301 serving the existing property as well as their expansion. The applicant has agreed to 5 proffers, which are included in your staff report. With these proffered conditions, the applicant is agreeing to combine the 2 parcels of land and to have the entire business on the 1 parcel utilizing the existing commercial entrance. and would allow for the expansion of the business and associated warehouse uses. The comprehensive plan designates this area as rural and/or agricultural preservation. However, because it's an expansion of an existing small business adjacent to this property, the Commission felt that the expansion would not significantly or adversely impact the character of the area. VDOT has reviewed the application and commented on it and made some comments which were not actually applicable to the rezoning itself, but were in response to the existing commercial entrance. Planning Commission held its public hearing on June 20th, 2012, and there were no public comments either for or against the application. Planning Commission was satisfied that the rezoning with the proposed proffers would not have an adverse impact on surrounding properties or the area as a whole. Planning Commission did vote unanimously to forward this recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
Questions of Mr. Fincham? Thank you, Mr. Fincham. We will now declare the public hearing for the rezoning 02-2012, Robert and Wanda Harry. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on this issue in favor of or in opposition to? Is there anyone that would like to address the board on this issue in opposition to or in favor of? Mr. Harry, how are you this evening?
Very well, thank you. My name's Bob Harry, and I'm not sure which district I'm in anymore.
You used to be in Madison.
I know that.
Probably in Boulder.
I still have one of your signs.
No, you're in Reedy Church now.
Okay.
Reedy Church.
All right.
Just something brief. You know, we have had the opportunity to restore an old building on the south end of the county, and have put a lot of time and effort into this project. And 1 acre that is there that encompasses the original plot does not allow for any additional warehousing space or parking and stuff like that. And, you know, we think our business is growing and would like to kind of move it in a good direction. So that's the reason we're asking for this rezoning. Something we can help facilitate a little bit stores.
Thank you, Mr. Harry. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning request? One last call. Is there anyone else who would like to address or speak in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning request? Hearing no further comments, the public hearing is declared closed. Does the board have any questions of the applicant or of Mr. Fincham?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions, since
Thomas?
I actually did work with Mr. Harry and Mr. Fincham when he was in the Mattapanai district regarding this, I'd recommend that we approve RZ 02-2012. Mr. Harry's done a great job. I was by there twice yesterday, so it's a great facility. He's done a lot of work even with Rousey Boulevard, which has been a problem for a long time. So I'd recommend approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we approve RZ-02-2012, Robert and Wanda Harry. Discussion on the motion. All in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is Special Exception 01-2012, Bud's Towing. Mr. Fincham?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your next public hearing is SPEX 01-2012, Bud's Towing, Mark Giles, owner and applicant. They're requesting a special exception permit in accordance with Article 17, Section 13, and Article 9, Section 3.17 of the Caroline County Zoning Ordinance on Tax Map 68-A56. Property is currently zoned B1 business and contains approximately 2.489 acres of land. Property is located at 21,179 Jefferson Davis Highway, approximately a half mile south of Route 601 in the Mattapanai voting district. The proposed use is a towing service operation. The 2030 comprehensive plan identifies this property in an area designated for rural preservation with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres of land. The applicant is requesting a special exception permit to allow a towing service operation. The towing service operation is defined as an establishment that provides for the removal and temporary storage of vehicles from public or private property by towing, carrying, and/or hauling, and includes the on-site parking of tow trucks. Property is located approximately a half-mile south of the intersection of Coolwater Drive and Route 1. The property is Zone B1 and is the site of a pre-existing non-conforming vehicle repair business. Adjacent properties are Zone B1 and rural preservation. The applicant proposes to operate the vehicle repair business, which is already there now, in conjunction with the tow service operation. He's requesting an area of approximately a half acre in size surrounded by a fence to serve as a storage area for towed and repaired vehicles, as well as his tow trucks. 8 to 10 wreckers and support equipment would be housed on site as well. The applicant is requesting that temporarily damaged or abandoned vehicles be allowed to remain on the site for 2 to 3 days, and that vehicles towed for criminal impoundment be allowed to remain on site for up to 30 days. No more than 5 of such vehicles will be allowed on the site at any one time. A commercial entrance is required by VDOT standards and is shared with the adjacent parcel must be installed prior to the establishment of the operation. Only one entrance would be permitted so that the existing southernmost entrance would be abandoned. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this special exception request at its April 18, 2012 meeting and ultimately deferred action to its May 16th meeting. The Planning Commission had a number of questions related to the application, and I think generally they can be broken down to 3 areas. One was the fencing and landscaping requirements. Second was the number and type of vehicles that would be stored there and the length of time those vehicles would be stored. And the third would be the type of tow trucks and tow equipment that would be stored at that facility. Zoning ordinance contains 9 standards which are to be utilized in the evaluation of a special exception application. In the end, the Planning Commission felt that the granting of the special exception and the conditions would not adequately satisfy those standards contained in the zoning ordinance and recommended denial of the application. Included in the staff report are the suggested conditions that were presented and discussed by the Planning Commission prior to its recommendation for denial. Those recommendations or those suggested conditions are included in the staff report in the event that the board wishes to consider approval of this request. The Planning Commission also requested that staff identify other potential conditions for approval or areas for discussion as part of its analysis of the application. And those are also included in the staff report for the board's consideration. And with that, I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Board have any questions of Mr. Fincham? Thank you, Mr. Fincham. We will now declare the public hearing open for special exception 01-2012 Bud's Towing. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this special exception request? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request?
Yeah, I'm Mark Giles, applicant. I would just love to see this approved, basically. If y'all got any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay. At the end of the public hearing, Mr. Giles, if the board have any questions, we'll call you back up. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? Seeing no further comment, the public hearing is declared closed. Board have any questions, comments to Mr. Fincham or to Mr. Johns? Mr. Thomas?
Well, I'll start over there.
All right, Mr. Black? Mr. Taylor?
Well, I see that the recommendation is for a denial, which comes from the Planning Commission. I guess there are a couple of questions that I would like, I guess maybe Mr. Fincham.
Okay, Mr. Fincham?
Mr. Fincham, I was just looking at it in the discussion, and they were talking about storage, and they said no more than 5 vehicles at any time would be stored on site. One of the questions that I have is, how are you going to enforce that? I mean, it's easy to say if we were to approve this, how are you going to do it? And if there are more than 5 vehicles, what are you going to do?
I think that was also one of the concerns of the Planning Commission, Mr. Taylor, was the enforceability of a vehicle limit. To actually make a determination like that, you would almost have to inspect the site every day, which staff does not have the manpower to do that. And I don't think the board has requested that we do that with any other use permit that has been granted. So realistically, that limitation would be difficult for staff to monitor and enforce without a routine presence. Now there is a condition which recommends a quarterly report to the county, which I believe is actually a standard that we have in our ordinance related to tow storage lots, and some of the standards came from that specific use designation in the ordinance.
Okay. Well, just one other one. It talks about adversely affecting the character of the area surrounding this particular site. And I guess this is more of an observation than a question, but to me it's just difficult to do that. I mean, you don't know what's going to be there. I don't know what's there now, and you don't know what's going to be there in the future. But I know we ride by operations all over the county, and unfortunately, what starts to be 1 or 2 vehicles grows, and then you end up with an unsightly picture. And so it's just, again, it's just hard to enforce, as you have said. And I just don't know how we can approve something going into this type of situation. I'm sorry.
Certainly your fencing and landscaping requirements are designed to try to mitigate that. Visual impacts are always a concern. And I think your fencing and landscaping requirements are intended to try to address just that issue. Arguably you could have some of that same issue there now with the existing non-conforming use in terms of the visibility of vehicles awaiting repair. But certainly I think visual impacts to the area are always an issue that the Planning Commission and historically the board have tried to mitigate as much as possible.
That's all I have.
Other questions?
Yes, sir. And I want to go back. It's currently zoned B1, and it's currently zoned auto repair now, correct?
The auto repair establishment is a non-conforming use. That is correct.
But it can still continue as it is.
It can continue as is. Yes, sir.
And it can park whatever they want out front.
Within the confines of what is currently permitted, yes. They could not expand their area.
Right.
That's correct.
So how much is currently actually encompassed in that? Because you said it's 2.2 2.48 acres. So is it all encompassed in that?
No, sir, I don't believe it's all encompassed in that. We actually have a sketch plan in the files that identifies the area that the vehicle repair facility covered, but it was not the entire 2 acres. Zoning covers the entire 2 acres. But historically, and we've had enforcement actions on that property in the past, the entire property was not subject to the auto repair non-conforming use.
I guess my question is he limiting the size of what he could do out front and behind the business with what we've got in front of us now?
Yes. Under the fencing, under his concept plan, the front portion of the property would not be utilized for either the storage of, the temporary storage of vehicles or the tow trucks. He's proposing an office building on site with the fencing to the rear of the property. So basically, you have the existing auto repair facility, and then you would have the tow service, the towing service adjacent to, but behind the new building, but adjacent to the existing business.
I guess my other question is, how is this different than the last tow lot that we approved further up in the business park in Ladysmith? What's the difference?
That was actually a tow storage lot, which was specifically for the storage of vehicles, the temporary storage of vehicles. That facility, if you recall, has a separate location for its tow service operation. So that was a different use designation that requires M1 zoning. In this request, he's requesting temporary vehicle storage in conjunction with the SE for the towing operation, the tow service operation.
But those trucks would have to be behind the fence.
Yes, that's correct, as suggested in the conditions that were prepared.
I guess my concern is that it's already a business. It already can have cars out front. We can't do anything about that. We could at least tighten what's there by allowing this to be a tow service and enforce the fencing and enforce those being behind fences, whereas we can't now. And I'm looking at actually bettering the property than leaving it as is more than anything else. And I understand the staff time, but I guess that's what I'm looking at, is how do we improve this property and make it so that it's usable instead of the, because I've looked at the property going back and forth to the county fair a couple weeks ago. And it's nothing special now. I'm hoping anything would improve this at this point. And I guess I'm leaning towards it's a business. I understand that, and I understand the applicant has other places he could take cars that were beyond something that you would leave someplace that you can't actually do anything with. I was wondering if we could make that a condition as well.
We can look at that, Mr. Seeley.
Okay, thank you.
Thomas, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Fincham, during your presentation, you said there were compliance issues at the site before?
Previous owners, related to the operation of the auto repair establishment.
Okay. Previous owners?
Yes,
So not
not,
Mr. Giles at all?
not involved with this applicant.
Can you expound on what those were, just for...
Inoperable vehicles.
Okay. Okay. All right. Mr. Giles, may I ask you a question, please, sir? How you doing today?
Just fine.
Good, good. Now, you you own Bud's Towing that's on 301 North?
Yeah.
That property?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Outside of town?
Yes, no, I was in town. Plus,
Well, yeah, that's right. It's
Then I
in
got
town
the
now.
one, this salvage yard south of town.
Okay. So you have that one, and this place down here is also yours?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long have you owned those two?
Well, we've been in business for over 30 years. Me and
you-
my father.
you-
Me and my father for over 30 years.
Okay. And you've owned this one down on 301 for how long?
301 North,
South?
south for 30 years.
Okay.
The one south of town, by KOA, by the campground down there.
Okay, let me get my bearings. That's 301 there. There's one going south on 301.
Mm-hmm.
We'll call that the South 301.
That's south 301.
That you've owned for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one north of 301.
In town limits.
In the town.
Yes.
And we'll call that the North 301. How long have you owned that one?
I personally owned it since 2005.
Okay. I thought
I
it
mean,
was
it's been in the business for close to 20 years there.
Okay. Are either of those two operations typical to what this operation would be?
No. Close, but not. The one over there will not be like these other two.
Okay.
It would be more of a just basically towing and quick repair service.
Okay. And you operate a tow business now
Yes.
out of another location.
Well, I got an office in Carmel Church. It's already right there, about 207 in Carmel Church. I've got an office there for records too. But that one will be replaced by this one up on Route 1.
So if this were to be approved, you would close down the one on
It would
207?
just basically move up to,
And then you would move up to Route
Up to Route
1. Okay. Now, the Planning Commission voted to deny your request.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know why, or I don't know if Mr. Fincham knows why, but since they did, and you were at that meeting, I assume, I'm going to give you an opportunity to convince me to vote against them.
To vote against them.
Make me want to approve your project.
I think what their biggest thing was, they were confused between the towing service operation and the towing storage lot. This is not going to be a storage lot. It's going to basically house records. Very minimal storage. There'll be more repair cars there than it will be towed cars. And what will be towed will be behind the building, basically, out of sight, out of, you just won't see them. Unless you want to see them, I guess you can pull up there and look at them. I don't know. I don't know how to convince you. We just had, I think that was their biggest issue. They were confused with the storage lot versus towing service operation. And I'm not going for a storage lot.
All right, let me make sure that I understand what you're trying to do. I'm driving down Route 1 in my car, and the water pump goes out. Of course, I'm stuck there. You come and tow my car to this facility.
Mm-hmm.
You put a new water pump on.
Mm-hmm.
X amount of dollars later, I get my car back.
You're gone.
Okay? I'm driving down Route 1, and somebody pulls out in front of me, and I can't stop, and I hit him in my car. The front end is smashed. You take my car where then?
On that one, hopefully you got insurance, so we won't have to worry too much
It's the
about
law.
it.
It's the law. I've got insurance.
It would be temporarily on Route 1, stored there
Okay.
for the insurance company to come and deal with. If it was there more than 3-4 days, I'm taking it to the other lot. I don't want this one to be a hassle.
Okay. So that's the two real scenarios. You can do a quick repair there, and if we turn this down, you can still repair a car that
I will
breaks
still
down on Route
repair
1.
cars. Probably a lot more of them.
All right. I don't see, or I didn't see anything in the conditions or proffers that said you would close the one on Route 1. I mean, the one on 207.
On 207?
Yeah.
It's just basically moved. That's just a satellite office down there that basically, it's just,
It's beside the Moose, it's a little building beside
Oh,
the Moose
yeah.
Lodge?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just a little.
But I mean, there's nothing in the package here that says you would close that down if this passed.
Well, it's like I say, it's just an office. I
Okay.
mean,
But you have records there.
yeah.
I thought I've
Yeah.
seen records
Yeah,
there.
but basically my whole theory is try to get them all in one place.
So we would be doing a good thing by getting those records out of the 207 area.
If you think it's a good thing, I mean, yeah.
Well, it is a matter of perspective.
I mean,
Okay.
not for me. I mean, I like them all over the place. You know.
You have to get, and I mean, just so you know, I talked to the sheriff about this. You have to get permission from the sheriff and state police to run 95, correct? I mean, you can't just,
On their rotation list, but
yeah.
that has. You can still tow without being on any state or county list.
So if I break down on 95, you can come and get me?
If you call me, I can come get you in Florida if you want me to.
Well, I'd like you to take me there, but not get me. But all right, that's another
No
story.
problem.
All right. Okay, I'm just trying to get the whole thing. I think that's what I have for you now, Mr. Giles. I really, really appreciate your time. I need to ask Mr. Fincham a question, and then I'm good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Fincham, give me a little walkthrough through the Planning Commission's thought process and why they thought this was not a good idea. And I know you mentioned before fencing and the number and type of vehicles were a couple of issues.
I think the issues revolved around the visual impacts or concerns about the visual impacts and the compatibility with the area, both existing and future. There was a lot of discussion about the height of fence, about the type of fence, about the landscaping, about the type of vehicles that would be brought there. And in fact, one of the conditions is that, or recommended conditions from the commission, they were concerned about your larger, heavier types of vehicles, dump trucks, tracked semis, buses, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it generally focused around the visual impacts of the facility and the number and size and types of vehicles that could be stored there and the length of time that they could be there. I think if you read the conditions, it generally speaks to those issues.
Okay. And when we talk visual impact, I'm sure the one on 301 South was a factor.
Possibly, yes, sir.
That was very diplomatic, Mr. Fincham. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fincham, we talk about aluminum fencing and tubular fencing that the applicant has suggested. I know the one on 301 North and has a fencing around it. It's a chain link fencing around that facility. What are we talking about aluminum? I mean, what type are we talking about? The type that you see through and it's like a chain link fencing or what?
No, sir. It would not be see-through in the areas that are visible from Route 1, which is your highway overlay corridor district. But no, you're not talking about see-through fencing. It would be a solid fence. I believe our ordinance requires that it be supplemented with landscaping as well.
I guess my concern is I know of another place that's north of Cedon that I guess we talked about that type of fencing and the landscaping for that type of fencing. This has been many years ago that took place.
I could go back and look at that, Mr. Akers. It's
But
not
the trees died, the land